And the Arsenal players had to show up.
So there was that scoreboard pressure. The gap at the top was down to 2 points, but they've responded emphatically. I don't think it could have gone any better for Arsenal.
What do you think the turning point was in the game? I think it was the fact that they gave the goal away so quickly at the start of the second half.
And Victor Gyökeres had his best game. 2 goals he took brilliantly,
Yeah, he did.
but he had his best game for Arsenal today.
The first one was a brilliant finish, and the second one,
Let him have his
he
moment.
used that power, as I say, to outmuscle Arteta. Great.
You need your big players to have big moments, and that's what big games are about, the big moments. So you've had 2 from Eza, obviously 2 massive moments for Gyökeres. I'm hoping that you see with Arteta that he released the hounds a little bit. There was a little bit more freedom, so it wasn't as formulaic as what has been in the past, and I think that suited Eza.
I think it's big for the title race that Arsenal have won this because it keeps everybody duelling for longer.
You know what could be significant as well? The fact they've won by 3 goals.
Yeah.
Goal difference could be massive come the end of the season.
Arsenal have had this big lead, but all of that pressure is on them because they haven't been able to win it under Arteta. Guardiola's got course and distance. He knows how to do this.
Welcome to Premier League All Access. We're at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Tottenham just been beaten by 4 goals to 1 by Arsenal in the North London derby again. Perry Groves is on enemy territory, and he did behave himself pretty much today.
I thought I was very restrained.
You were, even though you were objective. What were you? Which one?
Objective, subjective, both at the same time.
One of the two. Anyway, it's a great win for Arsenal after lots of pressure coming into the game because of the victory for Manchester City the night before. And Crook, I think when we walked into this stadium, we didn't expect the atmosphere to be like it was. It was absolutely deafening in here. It was absolutely brilliant. It smothered you. And I can imagine it was quite intimidating for the Arsenal players, but they dealt with it really well in the end.
Yeah, they did. And I think you made the point before the game that whenever they've been in a situation where they have to play later than Manchester City, they've struggled to put wins on the board. Obviously, City did their bit against Newcastle, so there was that scoreboard pressure. The gap at the top was down to 2 points, but they've responded emphatically. And actually, we wondered how would they recover from throwing away that 2-0 lead at Molineux. Well, a 4-1 win against your arch rivals on enemy soil is the perfect way to do that. I think Mikel Arteta got his team selection spot on. He put Eberechi Eze in that number 10 position. He scored twice. Gyökeres leading the line up front. He's got 2 goals as well. So apart from the one Declan Rice mistake that led to the Tottenham goal, I don't think it could have gone any better for Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, when you saw the team selection, you seemed pretty confident. Not only because Arsenal looked to be at almost full strength, but I think if you look at the Tottenham team and the Tottenham bench, every single one of the Arsenal team and their bench would start ahead of the team selection that Tottenham could put out.
Yeah, that's what we said before the game. If you went man for man, then Arsenal would win the game. And I was just, I don't know if worried is the word, but in the past we've been a bit too passive, and I wanted to be into a basketball game because if you've got better players than the other team, then you're going to win it. And to be fair, I just thought that Spurs' team shape, the formation was good in the first half. The shape was good. You know, they went the sort of the 5-3-2, and they went sort of a mid-court press. They didn't try and overplay at the back. Vicario went long most of the time. They kept, although Arsenal dominated possession, I think it was 72% possession in that first half. Spurs still kept himself in it. And Crookie mentioned there about Declan Rice. Mikel Arteta spoke yesterday about basically showing up. And if you don't want to be in these situations and handle the pressure, then you shouldn't be
He
asked.
talked about the noise, didn't he? He was talking about the fact that, you know, the people were talking about you. People are going to criticise you. People are going to come for you. Because 20 years people have been asking for Arsenal to get back in title races and be part of the conversation. Now you're in the conversation. If you don't want to be a part of it, then you're in the wrong club.
Yeah, the thing is, you're judged on a different. When you play for the big boys, you play for Man United, when you play for Liverpool, when you play for Arsenal, the traditional sort of big three historically, you're going to get judged on a different level. And that's what happens. You have to be mentally strong because you're under scrutiny. And as you said there, the atmosphere here was absolutely rocking.
You were nervous. He was nervous, wasn't
he? I had,
he was
I had the hairs on the, not on my head, but on the back of my neck. They were standing up. But I must admit,
he did have a little bit of a wobble. He was worried. Do you remember when we were in a break and he was shouting because he thought that Tottenham were going to score?
I wanted to play. We know when you get that adrenaline rush and you think, wow, you get that buzz, you think this is when you miss not playing. And the Arsenal players had to show up. And I've got to mention Declan Rice. Crookie said there about the mistake that he made, which he did for Colin Warner's goal. He didn't alter the way that he played. Do you know what I mean? He just did exactly the same, kept himself on the ball, wanting the ball, demanding it, and that's where you show your big characters. And Victor Gyökeres had his best game. 2 goals he took brilliantly,
Yeah, he did.
but he had his best game for Arsenal today, where him and Jagusin were having a little battle, a bit like Haaland and Dan Burn.
It wasn't
Manchester
anything
United.
like
It was because they were physical. They were.
They're not
that makes
heavyweights.
sense.
Not
They
the
are.
same.
Gyökeres
Gyökeres might be big and powerful, but Dragusin gave him far too much room.
Yeah, but that
especially
was
with
it.
his
Dan Burn's a far better defender than Radu
But,
Dragusin.
but let's say in the second half, that little battle, then Gyökeres come out on top. And what Spurs did in the second half, which was quite surprising, is they started to try and play out from the back, like the free centre half split, go for the lines. That enabled
It
Arsenal
was
to press.
interesting, wasn't it? Because Geese just dragged me into the toilet just now and said to me, Sam, what do you think the turning point was in the game? And I said, I think it was the fact that they gave the goal away so quickly at the start of, of the second half. Because although they weren't brilliant in the first half, Tottenham, they were better. They fed off the energy of the crowd in that first 45 minutes. But to come out in the second half and concede in that manner, and that's when you started seeing all that finger pointing again as they broke away after the goal had been given and Arsenal was celebrating. They're all turning around to each other and pointing, deciding who was to blame for the error, and it almost felt like harping back to what we'd seen recently.
Well, he's not got a magic wand, has he, Igor?
He hasn't even got a squad.
Igor Tudor, because he's still got, 13 players out injured. His captain unavailable. That was his own fault for that brainless red card that he got against Manchester United. You've still got players who aren't particularly good at defending, as I think we saw in all 4 Arsenal goals. I think he'll be really disappointed, the new Spurs manager, with how easy Arsenal found it to cut through them. And it's interesting what Perry said there. If it became a basketball match, Arsenal would come out on top because they've got better players. Obviously, the reverse fixture, Thomas Frank went to the Emirates. He tried to be too defensive, probably.
Yeah.
They've gone completely the other way today, and that hasn't worked either. So I wonder, actually, if he had his time again, might Igor Tudor have tried to keep it a little bit tighter?
I think it's big for the title race that Arsenal have won this, because it keeps everybody duelling for longer into the spring and then into the summer. It is still a long way to go. We've got 10 games for Arsenal, 11 games for Manchester City still to play. At the bottom of the table, I also think it's significant as well, because, they're very fortunate, Tottenham, that Nottingham Forest didn't pick up a point today or 2, because they still don't look safe to me, especially when you bear in mind, Maddison, Kulusevski, Bentancur, Kudus, Romero, Porro, all unavailable again today. Solanke only coming back from illness in midweek. They've taken just 10 points from 13 home games. In fact, 10 points now from 14 Premier League home games. They never seem to be able to find their rhythm in this stadium. And a lot of that's down to the recruitment, right? So over the course of many years, they haven't been able to put the quality into this squad. One of my friends said to me earlier on today, the problem is, Mickey van der Ven aside, we don't sign players of the quality that we need to compete at the top edge of the table.
Well, he's not going to be here next season either, is he, Mickey van der Ven? He's going to want to
say that they get a little bit uppity in these parts if you start talking about Van der Ven leaving.
He's not allowed to say anything in here.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad I'm still in here.
To be fair, we're quite surprised you are.
Actually, by the way,
there was a point where you nearly got
I
kicked
was
out.
very, very reserved today, by the way. I was very controlled.
Because
exactly.
if you hadn't have been, you'd have had the
I would have
Secret
been,
Service on you.
I would have been lodged out, yeah.
There's
So
a woman who's standing, she's still standing about 3 inches from us, keeping an eye on everything that you do.
I think she's man to man.
Yeah. Well,
She was closer to you than Dragusin was to
Exactly, yeah,
Gyökeres.
you're not wrong.
her marking on you was definitely better than what we saw out on the pitch from Tottenham. But, I mean, you mentioned when we were on air that the runner games they've got to come. I think it's Fulham away, isn't it, next up for Spurs. They've got to play Forest in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah,
Crystal Palace.
They feel like big games,
They
don't
are
they?
big games, and it's a big moment for Igor Tudor.
Do you know what they have to do as well, though? Obviously, this North London derby is massive. It's massive for both. I think this is the biggest North London derby since the semi-final, the first ever semi-final at Wembley in 1991 of the FA Cup.
yeah.
So,
Gazza's free kick.
yeah, George said to me, go and change the game. We was 2-1 down, we lost 3-1, so I actually did it. So I did my job. What they've got to do is the Spurs fans have got to be behind their team in every single home, not just for the North London derby.
They were brilliant.
Honestly,
In the first half, can I say, as the team emptied in the second half, so did the belief from the
but
terraces.
it's very difficult.
But you're 4-1 down against your nearest rival.
If your team's getting scored, which they were in the second half, it's difficult to have that positive energy. But what they've got to do is they've got to keep that positivity and that energy for all their other home games. Because you was at the Etihad yesterday, and you said about the atmosphere, how it helped the Man City play. These players, any player that tells you that the atmosphere in the stadium doesn't affect them, I don't believe them, because you're human and you feel whether it's positive or negative. So the atmosphere is great, but the Arsenal players, they will walk off that pitch now because they knew that they were under scrutiny because Man City win yesterday puts the pressure on. Comes to North London derby, I think it did Arsenal a favour being away from home.
Yeah.
Today, because you're going into a bear pit and you're the pantomime villains, you know what I mean? And you had 3,000 Arsenal fans over in the corner there. They made their voices heard when Arsenal started to dominate the game. So big result for Arsenal. The Man City fans will be looking at it thinking when it was 1-1, like we got a little wobble.
Did you leave a derby once when Manchester United were playing Manchester City at home? I think they were 5-1 down at the time. Johnny Evans made a mistake.
Well, you're rewriting history a little bit.
You walked out and then
4-1.
4-1.
It was 4-1. By the time I got to the Trafford, which is just at the end of the road, it was 6-1.
And then you came back in to find me.
I did come back in to find you, but before that Manchester derby, I was actually speaking to someone in the pub, and I saw the team. I wasn't Johnny Evans' biggest fan back then, and I said Johnny Evans is going to cost United this game, and he got sent off.
So you're Man United through thick and thin and thin.
Only in the good moments, I think, which is the issue. In terms of good moments, where do Tottenham go from here then? Because Igor Tudor obviously has only got certain resources to work with. Is his front foot style of football with three at the back going to work for Tottenham Hotspur? Is it going to be enough to get them over the line? Because they only need a couple of wins, really.
Yeah, but again, if you're being hyperly critical of the way he's set up today, João Paulinho isn't really a centre-back. He's had to go in there because he wants to play a back three. Yeah, but
he had no other choice.
We hammered Ruben Amorim for not having a plan B, so this guy's come straight into English football.
He did have a choice because Archie Gray has played at centre-back probably more often than Paulinho.
Or just go with the two.
But I think he wanted the physicality of Paulinho. But the thing is,
there's no right back by name.
No.
Yeah, but you're forgetting as well, Igor Tudor doesn't know the Premier League. You know what I mean? It's very managing in Europe, obviously managing Juventus, and getting them into the Champions League. This is a different sort of football.
And that's why it's a gamble. But also, just on the formation, I don't want to make it a whole conversation about his tactics, but how many managers have actually come into the Premier League and made a success of playing a back three? Antonio Conte won the league with it at Chelsea. Oliver Glasner did very well with it last season to win the FA Cup. Apart from that, it's not really a style for me that's suited to English football.
It doesn't really matter about tactics and style, and
well, it will do going forward.
It might be going forward, but it's about making sure that when you're on the ball, you play the way you need to play to get a result in a football match. And at the end of the day, right now they don't have the quality of player to be able to do that, which is a real issue for Tottenham Hotspur.
And you feel for people like young Archie Gray, who got absolutely bullied by Gyökeres for the last goal. Again, he's played pretty much everywhere since he came to Tottenham, apart from in goal. He doesn't very often play in the position that I think he wants to play in, which is central midfield. But he's a young player still learning his trade, and he's going to be asked now to be a key part of what is a relegation fight.
Enough talk about Tottenham. Can we talk about how good Arsenal were then today? Like the statement.
We did Arsenal at the beginning.
Yeah, a little bit.
I thought they were very good, and I mentioned it was maybe a little bit of a surprise that Eze got the nod, bearing in mind his recent form. But he's
scored
responded.
so many goals here. He always scores in this stadium. He's done it for Bournemouth. He's done it for Arsenal.
He got 8 in the last 5 against Spurs. Yeah. And I think it was good management from Mikel Arteta saying...
because he is a gooner?
But Richard, and he knows what it means if you're a gooner. But again, he got his hat-trick in the first game, and he hasn't hit the standards that he would like to hit, because I think today... I'm hoping that you see with Mikel Arteta that he released the hounds a little bit. There was a little bit more freedom, especially even in the first half when it was 1-1, where there was interaction between Saka was coming off the right-hand side, Eze was drifting in, Trossard was coming in centrally. So it wasn't as formulaic as what has been in the past. And I think that suited Eze. And it probably suited Eze being away from home, because you do get that little bit more space where teams
even at half
don't
time,
sit deep.
Going in at 1-1, he had a massive smile on his face. Eberechi Eze. He thoroughly enjoyed this North London derby. And I thought
so much room.
I thought Saka was brilliant as well. And I don't think he's had a stellar season by his standards, but I think you saw the best of Bukayo Saka today. And Gyökeres 2 goals. The first one was a brilliant finish. And the second one, he's used that power, as I say, to outmuscle Archie Gray. So probably his best day in an Arsenal shirt.
Very much so. 15 goals this season. The first goal...
Take us back to half-time. Go on, tell everybody what happened.
Well, there was just a little bit of a Barney, shall we say, a little bit of a coming together with you two, Herbert, and me. No,
we were trying to wind you
Hold on. No, you weren't. You were slaughtering Gyökeres in the first half.
Slaughtering.
He's got a Tonka touch. He can't get on with it. And you said that one hit his heels.
So he doesn't get away from anyone.
You said said one hit his heels. I went, no, Declan Rice should have put it in front of him.
I said it
And
summed him up.
I said that he was playing well in the first half. And I said to you at half
did,
time,
you did.
he will score.
I was wrong.
Right? And you said for his goal, which is a great ball in from Timber, right?
Heavy
You went
touch.
You went heavy first touch. I'm like, he's in the D.
was
He's took it
winding
out.
you up.
No, you weren't.
I was.
But he's done his coaching badges.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Europa A licence. And
Europa. Is that like a one down from the UEFA?
Do you know what could be significant as well? The fact they've won by 3 goals.
Yeah, yeah.
Goal difference could be massive come the end of the season.
Well, of course, because yesterday they closed the gap to just 1 in terms of goals, and now it's back up to 4 again. Look, it might come down to it. And I remember go back to the conversation I had with Pep the other week when I said to him, you know, that goal could change everything.
When he chased him down the tunnel at Anfield.
The other mention was
Pep. And he said to me, don't worry, we'll score more goals. But actually, Arsenal have got another 4 today.
We mentioned well about big players make big moments. David Raya pulled off a brilliant save.
He did, from
when it
Richarlison.
3-1. Richarlison's flick at the near post. Donnarumma did the same thing yesterday, obviously for Man City, when Harvey Barnes had the shot, didn't he, from the edge of the box, and he'd save it low down to his right. If that goes to 3-2, trust me, that can still get the atmosphere then explodes, and it goes a little bit nervy. So you still, again, you need your big players to have big moments, and that's what big games are about, the big moments. So you've had 2 from Eza, obviously 2 massive moments for Gyökeres. I've got a cheeky little bet with Charlie George that Gyökeres will get 20. I can't remember if it was 20 Premier League goals or 20 goals.
I don't think you'll get 20 Premier League.
You'll get 20 in all competitions, maybe.
Yeah, but we've still got 10 games to go. So we could go on a little run now. See, so Charlie, I'm coming for you.
Okay, just a quick word. Gabriel, when he was pushed in the back.
It's a foul, 100%.
Yeah, listen, every ex-player we've spoken to says it was a foul.
It was a brutal push
I think
from Colin White.
He's already had a go for not having coaching badges, so I think we're going to have to...
You're going to dive.
No, you can't do it. You think
We're going to have to bow down to Perry on this one.
Dive, quick, dive.
He thinks we're trying to push him towards the bar. He ain't going there. He won't spend any money.
Dive, right, okay. That's the first part of the North London Derby review podcast done. The rest of the Premier League All Access podcast looks at Manchester City's victory, Chelsea's failure to beat Burnley yesterday, and a whole lot more besides. So stick with us. So we're going to start our review of the rest of the weekend by looking at James Milner, who did absolutely brilliant in the game against Brentford, but more importantly, he not only was part of a Brighton midfield that won the game by 2 goals to 0. Not many people win at Brentford, by the way, but he became the record holder in terms of Premier League appearances. You spoke to him a little bit after the game, didn't you? And listen, he played it down, because he's boring James Milner. Although apparently, do you know what? I think that's him. You know, I think he does that himself. Yeah. I think he does that. I think that is him.
Seriously?
Or if it's not him, I think it's someone he knows.
Okay.
I think he in collab
because it
with.
reared its head again, didn't it, last night with a spoof conversation between him and Gareth Bale.
Yeah. So I think he's part of that in some way, shape or form, which I think shows his real personality. But you spoke to him, he played it down, but what a fantastic Premier League servant.
Incredible. I think my first question to him was, if I told you 23 years ago when you made your debut that 23 years later you would be the record Premier League appearance holder, what would you have just said? And he said, okay, thanks for that. Which sort of sums it up. But do you know what? It also dispelled this myth that some Brighton supporters have built up, that actually the only reason he's getting minutes this season, James Milner, is because they wanted to break the record. It's become the James Milner testimonial, according to one of our talkSPORT colleagues. He ran the game from midfield and did a really important job for the team. And I thought it was interesting that Fabian Hertzler, at a time when he's coming under a lot of fan pressure, not necessarily from the board, but certainly from supporters, went for those old heads. Pascal Gross, 34 years of age. Danny Welbeck, similar vintage. Lewis Dunk, obviously captaining the team at 34, and Milner himself at the age of 40. And those old heads got a really important result for Brighton.
And in traditional Crookie style, I think you wrote a blog on the talkSPORT website in which you've likened them to Dad's Army, because, you know, one for the kids, the reference there.
I think my line on air was Brighton's Dad's Army have made Nathan Collins look a stupid boy, because it was a big mistake from Collins not long after coming off the bench that really sealed the game. And Keith Andrews was quite honest afterwards. He said, for whatever reason, we just weren't at it today, and sometimes that can happen. I just had a feeling in my water yesterday that Brighton would get a positive result then.
Kevin Hatchard, is James Milner older than you?
No, he's not. So thanks for that. That's a great opening for me.
You had to think about it.
I did actually. Well, when you get to my age, you have to think about everything, to be honest. Everything takes a while. What a phenomenal achievement. And I think things really interesting about him. And you mentioned how well he played for Brighton against Brentford. Jurgen Klopp, when he talks about him, and of course he worked with him for a long, long time, he doesn't just talk about the kind of classic tropes about Milner, the work rate, the fact that he's always top of the bleep test, the fact that he's, always has that energy. He said technically he's one of the top 5 players he's ever worked with. And he genuinely believes that because of the versatility, because of, just his all-round quality. And you don't last as long as he has if you're just about those physical aspects. So it's an incredible achievement. I mean, he played against David Seaman. Seaman is now 62. So it just shows you just how long he's been going. And for him to be in on merit at this stage, it's just phenomenal.
I don't think you'd really get on with him, though, if you spent any time with him outside of football, because, of course, he's a teetotaler. Do you think once he gives up the game, he will have a beer?
I'm not sure he will,
He doesn't like it. That's how it started. I think he was in the Leeds Academy, and someone tried to give him a beer. He didn't like the taste of it, so he's never.
You don't get many Yorkshiremen who don't like a beer, do you?
Yeah, I know. It's quite strange, but he is one, and that's, I think, part of his secret to longevity as well. The fact that he hasn't succumbed to the demon of alcohol, which the rest of us have badly succumbed to. He's not ready to take his pension just yet. 654 appearances. He'll have a few more, that is for sure. And he may well have another year in him as well. Brentford, a little bit disappointed, I think, with that performance. Brighton, necessary for them this weekend. Obviously, the big story on Saturday night was Manchester City's victory over Newcastle United, Kevin. I thought Manchester City actually did a professional job here because Newcastle played really well, especially in the second half, but just didn't have that cutting edge.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think they really had to see it out professionally. But what was interesting about this was just the extent to which Nico O'Reilly dominated the game, because he gets the 2 goals for City, but he also had numerous other runs. His intelligence on and off the ball is phenomenal for a player of his age. And we know this, that Pep Guardiola, he doesn't just, throw appearances at people. You have to earn them. And he's judging you in every game, every week, every training session. And we've seen players, young players who've had runs in the team before and have kind of disappeared a bit. But I think O'Reilly is there to stay. What an incredible performance from him. I was surprised, actually, how well Newcastle did, given they'd got all the way to Baku. They put so much intensity into that performance against Karabakh, especially in the first half. I was surprised that they were able to last the pace with City, because I thought they did, had the same number of shots on target, only a couple of shots fewer over the piece. So I thought it was a good performance from them.
And bearing in mind, they only made one change to the starting 11 from that game in Baku as well, which was quite impressive. Actually, I suppose Eddie Howe after the game. And he was saying, actually, he's so disappointed because it was one of those matches where you probably played the best you've ever played at the Etihad. You've come away with nothing, as is usual for Newcastle. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it, to think they've never won in the Premier League at the Etihad Stadium. It's absolutely crazy. It's the longest winning run.
Winless.
Winning run for one team against another. So it's 17 straight Premier League wins at the Etihad Stadium for Manchester City. But should they have had a goal? You texted me this morning. You said, Sam, I need to get into the FA Sam brain. Should Dan Burn have a penalty? Well, the answer, let me tell you at the beginning, is no. He shouldn't have had a penalty. But Newcastle might have been a little bit hard done by with a couple of decisions. Eddie Howe certainly thought so.
Yeah, I mean, just to clear up the Dan Burn one, because it was put to Eddie in his press conference that, according to the rule book, if you are pushed into an offside position, then it should be a penalty, basically, if it happens in the penalty area. However, the asterisk to that rule is that the ball has to be active and in play. And obviously, because it was a free kick, it was a dead ball situation, the ball was not active, so the law was applied correctly. I mean, even Eddie looked a little bit bamboozled when he was asked the question in his press conference afterwards.
Yeah, so what they could have done was maybe take the free kick again. That would probably have been in the spirit of the law. But because of the fact that it went to VAR, etc., it probably wasn't an option for the referee. The right decision was probably made. But it did feel a little bit sort of anti-football, really, that Ruben Dias has got away with pushing him into an offside position. He's scored, and obviously, it isn't going to count because of that. I thought they also could have been in a situation where Bernardo Silva might have been sent off for a second yellow card. Kevin Hatchard, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I could have seen that. He jumps recklessly into his opponent, doesn't he? And there's no attempt really to play the ball. This is Bernardo ball. He is a wonderful, wonderful footballer, but he knows the dark arts inside out, that fella. And when Pep Guardiola talks about him being, maybe the most intelligent player he's worked with or one of the best he's ever worked with, make no mistake, that is part of it. So, yeah, I think he absolutely could have got another booking for that. I thought it was a poor challenge, but there are lots of those over the course of a season from Bernardo Silva that he somehow manages to get away with it. Maybe it's because he's short in stature and referees let him off.
You get away with quite a lot, actually, if you just fly under the radar and just, and you're a little bit smaller than everybody else. Isn't that true?
I wouldn't know.
I thought again it was a really good game. Bernardo Silva, one of many people who could have been booked. I mean, Joel Linton came on and went around thrashing everybody for about 20 minutes as well. But it was good to see that he was back in the team. Look, I do think that Nick Pope probably could have done a little bit better with that first goal. I don't know what you think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a well-struck shot from Nico O'Reilly, and I echo what Kev said about how good he was. It's a bit of a dilemma, actually, isn't it, now for Thomas Tuchel? Because when he started to call him up, he was calling him up as a left-back.
Yeah.
And now he's playing in his actual position, which is midfield, which is where England have got a lot of players.
Well, no, you say England have got a lot of players. It's where England have been looking for someone to be able to play. And I think it is worth pointing out here that actually Manchester City look a little bit more sturdy, imperious. They look more like Manchester City as opposed to sort of like a shadow of the club that they were for the last 12 months. Mainly because although Rodri has improved, and I think he's playing well, he's got legs around him. Nico O'Reilly provides those legs in order to protect him a little bit because he can't cover the ground like he used to. So you need people around him. So what does Thomas Tuchel do? Does he call him up as a midfield player? Because, they've been searching for one. They've got Elliot Anderson. They had Adam Wharton. Everyone said, actually, we could use one of those two. Maybe Nico O'Reilly plays in that position.
Probably on form. If you listen to Crystal Palace fans, then Nico O'Reilly is ahead of Adam Wharton at this moment in time. So it will be interesting if we get to March and he's still playing well, whether he is in the squad and in what position. But to answer your question, yes, I think Nick Pope will be disappointed to be beaten from that distance at his near post effectively. Having got across there, I think he should have saved it.
Okay, the title race obviously impacted by what happened on Saturday night. Manchester City winning. They look like they're in great form. Then Arsenal do what they do on Sunday, which was a really good performance away from home. And all of a sudden, we're back to where we were before the weekend. So Arsenal have a 5-point lead here. They look as if they're going to... I think the two of them are going to go head-to-head now over the course of the season. Obviously, City have a game in hand. That big meeting in April between the two, absolutely pivotal. But what's fascinating for me is the way the managers conduct themselves. Arteta talking about, beautiful football after the game. The beauty of football is that you can always answer your critics just days after you've slipped up. And then Pep Guardiola talking to us afterwards, Kev, and saying, this is where the best part of the season starts.
Yes, that leapt out to me as well, actually, that mention of it being the best part of the season. And he's right, because he knows how to pace the season. He's done it time and time again. And what you're looking for is when you get to March, are you in position? And the answer is yes. They're in that League Cup final, still in the FA Cup, still got an ability to go deep in the Champions League. And Arsenal have all the pressure on them because Arsenal have had this big lead, but all of that pressure is on them because they haven't been able to win it under Arteta. Guardiola's got course and distance. He knows how to do this. His players know how to do this. I think you're right. I think they look a little less vulnerable in transition, which was a big problem for them. You look at the defeat against Werder Glimt, that really underlined that in the Champions League, those problems in transition against players who move the ball really quickly. But I think he's been tweaking things all the way, Guardiola. And, even though Haaland maybe hasn't been as devastating in terms of the volume of goal scoring, I think he's adding bits to his game all the time. So I still think City are very much in this, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they go on to win it. Let's not forget, because of that slip-up at Wolves, if City win every game now, including that Arsenal one, they win the league.
Yeah, Erling Haaland can't be annoying though, right? Okay, he can't start hogging the headlines for everything. He scores a lot of goals. He started to assist goals. He was brilliant defensively on Saturday. Don't start being annoying.
I've got to say, the cross for the second goal was exceptional for a player who, I've said in the past, he's not necessarily the most technically gifted. He's a brutal goal scorer.
You called him a donkey once.
I did call him,
which is a ridiculous thing to say.
Wow, what a luxury donkey that is, man alive.
That is your top class donkey. You won't find a finer one anywhere in the world.
I don't know. I found one.
Best donkey money can buy. Absolutely.
But you know what they've got now, City? They've got this spine, and they with Donnarumma, who made a brilliant save towards the end.
Yeah, from Harvey Barnes to the volley at the end.
Which went a little bit under the radar. So they've got Donnarumma, who's a giant in goal. They've got Mark Gay now coming in to shore up that defence. They've got Rodri, who is able to play more minutes now in midfield. Nico O'Reilly going in there with, and they've got Erling Haaland at the top end of the pitch. That is a strong spine of a title challenging team. And Semenyo as well,
really well, yeah. I mean, but obviously we didn't mention during that conversation Phil Foden, who was dropped from the starting lineup in the game against Newcastle. I do wonder what's going to happen with him, because if he can't get in the Manchester City team, it's going to be difficult to get into the England squad. Nottingham Forest 0, Liverpool 1. I mean, as this sort of is a relegation question, really, but Liverpool always talked about in the upper echelons of the league. So, Kevin, tell us, what did you make of this performance? Because our view is first half bad, second half better, got away with one in the end. What did you think?
100%. I thought the first half is as bad in an attacking sense as I can remember from Liverpool, actually, under Arne Slot, maybe before. They were no rhythm, no conviction, no intensity. I know that Florian Wirtz, they lost just before the game, got injured in the warm-up, but it was really, really poor. On the flip side of that, Forest played with real momentum, could have scored really early on. Callum Hudson-Odoi had a shot that was brilliantly smothered by Alisson. But Arne Slot made a point afterwards, and I agree with him, actually, that even when Liverpool were bad, and they really were, defensively much more solid than they have been. And I look at that win at Sunderland recently, and I know Fulham have now won there since, but they were the first visiting team to beat Sunderland at the Stadium of Light this season. And that was because Konate and Van Dijk were peerless at centre-back. And I think that's given them real confidence as a unit. And I thought they hung in there, and they did get stronger as the game wore on. So did they deserve to win, Liverpool? Absolutely not. But they've had a few this season that have gone against them in stoppage time, so they'll feel it's nice to get one go the other way.
Igor Jesus actually had a couple of opportunities to sort of run in behind the defence or whatever, and then Van Dijk just sort of swept up, nicked it, and stopped him from going anywhere, or Konate just edged him off the ball. There was a couple of occasions where that happened. I think what was concerning, what will be concerning for Liverpool supporters is that it did appear, and this may not be true, but it did appear that it was Alisson who had to come over and tell Arne Slot, your tactics are wrong. Szoboszlai shouldn't be playing at right back. Curtis Jones should play there. We need Szoboszlai further up the pitch. That's what it looked like. I don't know the change happened pretty soon after that conversation where he was pretty animated about it.
Well, that's very unusual.
And that's what Jeff Peters, our reporter on the ground, was reporting from the match.
Yeah, it's unusual if that is the case. But he's right. We've said it on previous podcasts. Szoboszlai is the one Liverpool player who's managed to maintain the incredible levels they hit last season into this as a midfielder. And when you take him out of that position and you put him at right back, where he's very capable, by the way, you do lose something in a very key area of the pitch. So if it is Alisson who's told his manager to make that change and ultimately they've won the game, then fair play to him. But that's not a great look, is it, for Arne Slot?
I don't mind that, and I tell you why. If you look at Real Madrid's successes under Carlo Ancelotti, for example, it wasn't unusual for Ancelotti to convene with the senior players like Modric, like Kroos, those guys, and say, what do you think? What should we do? How should we tweak that? Now, I know Slot doesn't seem to have done this and probably hasn't sought out Alisson's opinion, but I don't think a senior player with all of his experience who can actually, see things as they're happening, him going to the manager and saying, look, I think we need to change this. I think the manager then listening to that and changing it, it's not necessarily a huge sign of weakness. I'm not overly worried about that. I think it's probably a good sign if a senior player feels they can come forward and put that across.
Especially if it's Alisson, because he's watching it from a position
Yeah.
that nobody else is, which is from behind everything, and he can see everything as it unfolds. And obviously, everyone's making rush decisions once Wirtz gets injured, right? So he gets injured. Everyone thinks, well, quick. We all thought Curtis Jones would come in and play at right back. He didn't. He played in midfield initially, and then they switched it round. He did that. And obviously, Liverpool got better in the second half than they were in the first when they weren't very good at all. They got a little bit lucky with a goal. I mean, some people think they got unlucky not to have the first goal. Now, look, if the ball comes off your hand or arm accidentally or not, whatever, if it touches your hand or arm and goes into the goal, I'm afraid, whatever the situation, it has to be ruled out as a matter of law. It is law 12 of the IFAB laws of the game. It's there in black and white. It has to be ruled out. So that's because basically what they don't want is forever a goal to be scored by a hand. That's the fact. They never want that, right? So they've decided that is the case. So that's fair enough. That one was ruled out correctly. However, talk to me about the other goal, Kev, because it looks as if Virgil van Dijk is played onside by a toenail of Ola Aina, but no one's really explained the presence of Hugo Ekitike, who clearly impacts on the defender's ability to play the ball. No?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, I thought initially, having watched it, I thought Van Dijk was offside.
Yeah, so did we.
Then from a Liverpool point of view, I mean, make no secret of me being a Liverpool fan, I was
We
very
don't, anyway.
pleasantly surprised that it was given.
We're quite open about the fact that you're a Liverpool
exactly.
fan.
So I was very pleasantly surprised to see it was given. But yeah, I could certainly see that view. And again, I'm sure Arne Slot will say we've had a fair few of those go against Liverpool, and he's happy that one goes for them. But of course, that doesn't help Forest. The Forest situation I find really, really interesting because the quality of player is far too high to be in this position. But they do lack a clinical edge in that final third. They've got quality players, but they just don't seem to have that killer instinct. I thought Sangare in midfield was imperious. I thought he definitely
was in midweek as well,
to be.
in fairness, in Istanbul.
He's a super player. I think finally, it's taken a little while, but I think finally we're seeing the player that we knew from PSV who'd been linked with the Premier League for a long, long time before he came. He was excellent. But and again, you look at Anderson, you look at all of this quality, Murillo and Milenkovic, it's all there. They just never seem to quite be able to put it together. And having 4 different managers in the same season, how are you supposed to get any kind of cohesion?
I don't know why you've referenced that as if that should make a difference, Kev. I mean, that's just normal.
I know these tiny points, these regular managerial changes. I shouldn't really bring it up.
18 shots, only 2 on target. That tells its story to me because this is a team that don't have a clinical edge, and they bought on Peter Crouch, Lorenzo Luca late in the game. Such called because he is over 2 meters tall and he's from Italy, and of course, why wouldn't you call him Peter Crouch? That's just par for the course. But again, Igor Jesus scores in midweek. Looks like he can score goals against anyone. Then he comes to the Premier League and realizes actually it's a lot harder to score against Premier League defenses.
Yeah, it's a problem that Vitor Pereira is going to have to solve between now and the end of the season because they are in the battle. No question about that. I agree with Kev. I commentated the game against Fenerbahce. Fenerbahce were poor. They seem an expensive team of sort of Premier League rejects, if you like, or Premier League exiles.
Unbeaten at home, though, in the Turkish.
Yeah, and only 2 home defeats in all competitions all season. So that was a real statement victory. Sounds like they played with the same energy today that they showed there, which was maybe something they weren't doing under Sean Dyche. But ultimately, they do lack that quality up front, and they're going to need Chris Wood, I think, to get back fit and firing as soon as possible.
He's not going to be fit, is he? I mean, he's had surgery on his knee. It's going to be very difficult for him to get up to speed before the end of the season. They're going to have to find goals from somewhere. Right, okay, let's move on to the relegation battle. Burnley got a good point. West Ham got a point as well. Let's delve into it. So into the relegation zone, Burnley got themselves a point at Chelsea, and I think Chelsea have only got themselves to blame here.
Oh, no question. I mean, you talk about a lack of ruthlessness. That game could have been over by half-time if Chelsea had taken all the chances they created. Then they get, their 8th red card of the season, not including Enzo Maresca and his sending off, and it was a brainless challenge from Fofana. I know Sam Ellard, our reporter, was trying to defend him a little bit, but you can't go in for that kind of challenge, particularly not when you're on a booking. And in the end, Burnley could have won it, couldn't they? Because they had a good chance from another
James Ward-Prowse cross after equalising.
Should have scored really at the end of the game. Chelsea's defending was so poor. And actually, Kev, I mean, rather than sort of talking about the situation, the game itself, let's talk about what happened afterwards, because Liam Rosenior comes out and he properly loses his with the Chelsea players. Like he basically said there's someone in that team that didn't pick up their man. He's talking about Andre Santos, who loses Fleming for the goal. Should have picked him up, didn't do so. He knows Andre Santos from his Stradburs days, so I think that probably he feels as if he can wire into him a little bit, maybe, because he knows him well. And also he needs to do a show of strength, right? Because this team actually, in the first half of that game, were a bit casual, fancied themselves a little bit too much, flicks, tricks, thought that they were never going to lose the game, and then obviously dropped 2 points. Now, they've dropped too many points from winning positions. They've dropped too many points at home this season, and he needed to come out and sort of almost lay the law down. How do you think that those players are going to take that?
Well, they have to take it in a positive way, because if they don't, they're not going to qualify for the Champions League. And I think, we see this too often, and it happened under Maresca as well. There would be games that they wouldn't win that they should win. It strikes me they find it very difficult to put a 90-minute performance together, which makes some of the stuff at the Club World Cup all the more surprising. The way they played against PSG, they were absolutely outstanding, really intense from the get-go. I know that's a different manager now, but I look at that group of players and think, well, where is that? A lot of the time, you don't see that. You don't see it enough.
We see it in the big games, Kev.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. You look at the Barcelona game, for example. They played Barcelona
Liverpool,
off the park.
Liverpool,
outstanding, yeah. So that's an attitude issue. That's a mentality issue. I thought what was interesting as well, he did say about, Andre Santos not tracking, but he also said quite a few times, I know now who the players are who are going to dig in when things are going wrong. And I know the players who, effectively, it's that old, who can I go to war with, right? You see managers say this from time to time. And I thought that was really interesting, because he's only, really early on in the job. So if he's thinking already, right, who do I need to weed out? I think that's fascinating. But the problem I think he has is this. The defense keeps changing. It's going to change again because Fofana's going to be suspended. I still wonder who is picking the team, because there was all this talk about Enzo Maresca having all of these medical reports, and they were supposed to feed into his team selection.
Well, he says that he listens to the medical department, but he makes his own choices.
I mean, I look at the number of changes there are sometimes,
He's not sure.
And I wonder. I like him very much. I really do. I like the way he carries himself.
And I want him to work, but the Chelsea fans are a little bit skeptical, and he's gonna have to keep winning games in order to win them over, because I've got obviously quite a few Chelsea fan friends who get in touch with me all the time, and a lot of them are like, meh. Not sure about
I don't know if this is on him, though, at the weekend.
I don't think it is. I think it's on the players.
Fofana should know not to make that challenge. Andre Santos should know he's got to pick up his man. Cole Palmer and João Pedro should be more clinical in front of the goal. So I'm not sure that he could have done too much more. And actually, I was at the Leeds game. Apart from the sort of mad 5 or 6 minutes where they conceded 2 goals,
really good.
Chelsea were brilliant.
Yeah,
so again, is that on the manager, or is that on a young, naive, to use your word, dressing room?
Well, that's the other thing, right? Okay, you look at Chelsea's staff, and Chelsea staff basically have all been pinched from Brighton. They bought everything with them. I even think they bought the laptops. However, what they didn't bring was the experienced player in the dressing room. You look at Brighton and you see Adam Lallana was there, James Milner was there, Danny Welbeck is there, Lewis Dunk is there, Pascal Gross is there. Crook made his joke about Dad's Army. We just even a dad would be quite good. Do you know what I mean? They just need someone.
It's a huge problem. And the issue they've made for themselves is that you look at the structure of how to do the contracts and whatever, they aren't looking for experienced players, because
not at all.
There isn't a resale value. And they are going to want more money as a base salary than the other guys are on. So Mike Maignan a great example, right? So they looked at him in the summer. It looked as though he was going to go there. That didn't happen. I think that has cost them. Now, I know Robert Sanchez has improved this season. I get that. But this is exactly the kind of signing you need to make alongside the young guys you're going to bring in.
Yep.
My worry about them, and we've talked about this a lot, and I think it bears repeating, my worry about them, not everyone at that football club, I believe, is thinking about the end goal of trophies. I think there is an influence there thinking about, let's sign this player for 20 and sell them for 40 because it's clever.
Without doubt.
And it's that's a big issue. Because if your main thing is, right, let's be smart, let's bring in all these young guys and trade them, that might be fun. That might be a good game. Great. Well done. However, you're in this to win things.
They'll never win the league with this manner. There's no way they'll win the league the way things are going.
That's the
because
issue.
they haven't got...
They might pick up the odd cap along the way.
Of course they will, and they have done already, and that will continue to be the case, you know. But the fact is, you're never going to sustain a consistent level of performance with a team full of kids. Okay, the argument is, in 3 years' time, there won't be kids, there'll all be experienced players. If you haven't sold them by then, which is your plan. Basically, Noni Madueke is the poster boy example for Clear Lake Capital and the way they want to operate. They want to buy a player, develop a player, sell a player for more money. That's what they want to do.
Can you tell you something I read that I found really interesting this week? I was going through German media for the Leipzig game. I was looking at some stuff. There was a really interesting interview with Jan Diamande, who's been superb for Leipzig. He's been absolutely amazing for them.
This is the forward guy, yeah?
He's a winger, yeah. Ivorian winger. He's top. He's going to be a top player. He had the choice, so he says. He says he could have gone to Leganés in Spain or he could have gone to Chelsea. And he chose Leganés. And what he said was, I know that I need to get better. I know that I need to get experience. I can't do that on a bench. So he identified straight away, I'm not going to get that opportunity at Chelsea. I've got to do it a different path. And he's gone to Leganés and now he's at Leipzig. And in the end, he's going to go to the Premier League, I reckon, for 70, 80, 90 million. But what it is, it's an example of a player who already is thinking, what does Chelsea equal? Time on the bench. It's too hard for me to get the regular football I need to get to where I want to get to. He won't be alone in that. And I think that's an issue they've got going forward.
Recruitment-wise, it's a massive problem. Right, just very quickly before we end this game, let's just talk a little bit about the absolutely abhorrent racial abuse that was directed at Wesley Fofana and Hannibal Mejbri in the aftermath of this game. Look, at the end of the day, you can be critical of a footballer, you can be annoyed about the fact that they have done something that has influenced a result, but to debase yourself by getting involved in racist abuse is absolutely unacceptable, but it's also thick. For God's sakes, at some point, are we going to grow up as a society and get ourselves out of this absolutely ridiculous trend of, as soon as a black player or a player from an ethnic minority makes a mistake, that we go to the base level of insult? It's actually embarrassing on yourself if you do this. Okay, it makes you look really stupid. It shows how uneducated you are. Go and have a look. And actually, Wesley Fofana implores people to educate themselves on his Instagram. He says, you know, we create these big campaigns against racism, but nobody actually does anything. It's down to you. It's down to you, your friends, your parents, your kids. You have got to educate the people around you. For God's sakes, please do something about it. It's so ridiculous. It is unreal. I know that's a very small and inadequate response to what is a very big social issue, but everyone's got to do it themselves, right?
It's a really important one, Sam. It's super important because the more we talk about these things, I totally get where Wesley Fofana is coming from, because we can talk about campaigns and, you know, different flags and symbols and whatever as much as we want, but we need action. Now, in terms of the social media stuff, it's quite blatantly obvious that the social media giants have not done enough, haven't done anywhere near enough. And they'll always come out and say, we're investing in this, we're investing in that. It's not enough. And these things, even though it's very, very difficult, should have criminal sanctions attached. There should be an ability to go in there, identify people, and take the appropriate action. But I think what we can do in the media is we can constantly call this out. I think, I spoke a lot about what happened with Vinicius Jr. in the Benfica Real Madrid game. That's an ongoing investigation. But what disappointed me hugely was Jose Mourinho's
Yeah, I was about to
response,
say that.
because what he did was he sought to justify abuse that Vinicius Jr. has received in the past, because he said, why does it always happen to him? And he kind of justified that. And that was really disappointing, because there is never a justification for racist abuse.
But on the same side of the Jose Mourinho stuff, I want to highlight this, and I think this is, if you get the chance, please just go and watch Vincent Kompany, because
Yes,
I cannot
100%.
explain anything anywhere near as articulately and as intelligently as Vincent did the other day. Just go and watch that. That's it. Yeah. I think if you watch that, then, and that is part of everybody educating themselves. He was so good on it, so brilliant on it, that I think it's just something that we should all just absorb. I think that
and that's
probably
what we can do. We can platform the right people. We can platform
people. He is someone to listen to.
Yeah, and he took 12 minutes and he kept saying, look, I know I'm talking about this a long time, but it was genuinely, as you say, educational and inspirational, and so important. And people who do watch that, hopefully, it will have some kind of impact on them.
Let's move on to West Ham very quickly. And the game with Bournemouth, it finished 0-0. It wasn't a great game. Okay, it was a good game if you're West Ham, because you get a point. But again, it sort of showed that they lacked a bit of cutting edge. I was looking at the table, actually, and for all of the discussion about West Ham being on a good run, they've got 25 points.
Yeah.
It's only 2 the difference to Nottingham Forest. But Nottingham Forest, you think, as Kev's already articulated, have got more talent in their squad. Tottenham Hotspur, 29 points, might get dragged into it. But West Ham are still in big trouble, and they've got a tough run of fixtures to come.
Yeah, they have. And that's why it felt like a little bit of an opportunity miss. Although when we were speaking on our show, 10-1 on Friday, I said I fancied Bournemouth to get a positive result. They seem to be in a decent vein of form themselves. Who knows how important that point could be come the end of the season. Both teams probably came off the pitch thinking, well, we could have won that. And both teams, had they have lost, would have thought, well, we didn't deserve to lose. So on that basis, a draw is a fair result. But Mickey Gray was saying to us on Sunday, wasn't he, when he was at one of the games, 40 points, probably you need to stay up. I don't think West Ham are going to get to 40 points. They've got 11 games to go.
Might be a big
they're on 25. It'll be bigger than we've seen in recent seasons, but are they going to win 5 out of 11? West Ham, I can't see it.
Actually, I'll recalibrate that and say I think that the team that finished 4th bottom will get a big total. I'm not sure that will be what was required to get you into the division. I think actually you might be in a situation where West Ham only get 34, 35 points actually here, but Nottingham Forest get 37, 38. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes the 4th from bottom team achieve a higher total than they need to stay in the Premier League.
And on the flip side, for Bournemouth, looking at the other end of the table, because Brentford have lost, because Sunderland have now lost a couple of games at home, I think they see a real opportunity to get into Europe for the first time in their history.
3 of the next 5 games for West Ham United, by the way, Aston Villa, Liverpool and Manchester City, which is not a great list of fixtures. And they've got to go away to Brentford as well. And not a great list of fixtures if you want to get into the... we'll get out of a relegation scrap. Kev, thank you very much. I know we've kept you late on a Sunday night. We had to scramble back from the North London derby to do this podcast. Crookmeister, it's been lovely to see you on a Sunday night.
My pleasure.
Look at us. We look so relaxed and sophisticated sitting here, don't we?
We need the pipe and slippers now, don't we?
That won't last much longer once we get into the whiskey and the and the beer in a minute. Only joking.
It does look quite catalogue, this scene, I have to say.
Does it?
It does look quite Homes and Gardens kind of.
What sort of catalogue is that? Maybe best not answer. Kev.
That's probably where we end it, I think.
Yes, we'll see you on Friday when we look ahead to all the weekend's Premier League action, and we will have all the results of the European situations as well. So a lot to look forward to over the weekend. Join us on Premier League All Access and tell all your friends about us.